This is the All Things Marilyn Podcast. My name is Scott Fortner, Marilyn Monroe historian, collector, and owner of the Marilyn Monroe Collection.
I'm Elisa Jordan. I am an author, founder of LA Women Tours, and I am also a Marilyn Monroe historian.
Elisa, it's season 3 of the All Things Marilyn Podcast. Can you believe it?
Where has the time gone?
I do not know where the time has gone. It literally flies by. We got a number of topics to talk about and a number of guests lined up.
We do, and I'm really excited about this season.
I'm excited about this season. I'm super excited about our guest today. But before we talk about that, I do have a bit of an announcement. I have acquired a piece for the collection that I have wanted for decades, ever since it was first sold at the 1999 auction. And that is Marilyn Monroe's cowgirl boots from the Misfits. I won those at auction just last week.
When are you going to let me try them on?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to.
For those of you listening, the expression on Scott's face.
Yeah, sometimes you just see something that just catches your imagination, catches your fascination. And there are several items from Marilyn's personal life or her estate or her films that have caused me to have that reaction. And these boots from the Misfits that she wore, I think, are just so representative of so many different things that were happening in her life. Of course, that was her final completed film. She co-starred with Clark Gable. That was his final completed film. It was the end of her marriage with Arthur Miller. Just really a point in time. And of course, the movie was really a foray for her into very serious acting.
I love that movie.
It's really incredible. And she's really incredible in the film as well. Of course, written by Arthur Miller as a tribute to Marilyn and sadly the end of their marriage. That was added to my collection and super excited and picking those up this weekend.
I can't wait to see them. I won't try them on, but I do want to see them.
I did go and check them out at Julian's before the auction just to look and see. And I was like, okay, yeah, I think I need to get these. I need to try to get these. You never know that you're going to get them until you actually do.
And I live vicariously through you. So I'm glad you have them because they're in the family now.
Happy to have you along. We have a very special guest today, someone that we've had on the list to interview for quite some time. And we have the incredible and accomplished Holly Madison here on the show.
This is so much fun because Holly has long made it known that she's a big Marilyn Monroe fan and has a lot of respect for Marilyn. She pays homage to Marilyn. She's talked about Marilyn. It's a really sincere and deep appreciation. What I like about interviewing Holly is, unlike most fans, she is a blonde bombshell herself. And she can talk to what it is like to live that life and how people perceive you and how things have changed from the era when Marilyn was a blonde bombshell to things now, and how difficult it can be to be taken seriously. And at the same time, how things have changed for the better. You can be beautiful and smart and accomplished at the same time.
I'm really looking forward to getting to spend a little time with her and learn about her experiences and learn about her love of Marilyn. So should we dive right in?
Let's get into it.
If I am a star, the people made me a star.
Marilyn Monroe.
Like the stage here and now, fame is fickle.
Marilyn Monroe.
I give you the two most exciting words in the modern dictionary. Marilyn Monroe!
Holly Madison, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming.
You are the first guest for season 3. We very much appreciate you being here for the All Things Marilyn podcast. So for our listeners who might be living under a rock and may not know who Holly is, I'm going to go ahead and do an introduction for Holly. Holly is a successful and well-known American television personality and an accomplished podcaster, author, and Las Vegas performer. She starred in her own reality series, Holly's World. She's written 2 books, Down the Rabbit Hole, about her life in the Playboy Mansion, and The Vegas Diaries, Romance, Rolling the Dice, and The Road to Reinvention. She had a 3-year run at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas with her burlesque show called Peep Show. And she's appeared in countless movies and television shows, including General Hospital, Scary Movie 4, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Entourage, and The Bernie Mac Show. She's made appearances on Good Morning America, Inside Edition, The Wendy Williams Show, Entertainment Tonight, Dancing with the Stars, and the E! True Hollywood Story. Holly's also featured in the Playboy murders on Discovery Plus, and currently she's the host of Lethally Blonde on Investigation Discovery, which streams on ID. She also co-hosts her own podcast, Girls Next Level, with fellow former Playboy model Bridget Marquardt. And of course, Holly was on the wildly popular television show, The Girls Next Door, which was all about life in the Playboy mansion and living with Hugh Hefner. Holly is also a working mom, raising daughter Rainbow and son Forrest. And she's with us today because she's also a huge Marilyn fan. So welcome again to the podcast.
Thank you.
So you're busy. You are super busy.
Is that all you're up to?
Is that all you're doing? Before we dive into your love of Marilyn, how do you keep it all together? Tell us about your secret to balancing all of this amazing work and being a mom and everything that goes with that.
I don't know how I'm doing it. Sometimes I'm still like, what's even happening? I think the key to it is just a lot of planning ahead. I'm big on my iPhone calendar. I also keep an old school day planner as a backup. It's just a lot of planning ahead and trying to be prepared for everything. And my head is spinning. So it's definitely a lot, especially because I'm divorced and I co-parent with my ex-husband, who's great, but sometimes it's hard to juggle those schedules too, because he's also very busy. And we always want to make sure one of us is with the kids every day. So it's a lot. I don't know if I have the answer to how I'm doing it.
Yeah, just kind of day by day like everybody else, huh?
Yeah.
I found a quote that is
Mhm.
attributed to you, and I wanted to ask you about it because it opens up to exactly what we're talking about today. It's from your book. Like me, Marilyn had suffered at the hands of some not very nice men. She was used, unappreciated, and struggled to find herself. She worked her way up in Hollywood with stars in her eyes and a kind heart, but found that Hollywood wasn't always kind in return. She may have been publicly adored, idolized, and lusted after, but she felt alone and trapped. I wanted to ask you about your thoughts and what you were going through when you wrote that and just how you related to Marilyn in that.
Yeah, I wrote that in my book, Down the Rabbit Hole, which came out in 2015. And the point in the story where I put that was I had just left the mansion and I had just started to build a life for myself out on my own. And I was opening a show at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas and working on doing my own TV show. And they had this auction happening of some of Marilyn Monroe's items that I was involved in. And that made me think of her. And I was at this moment in my life where I was choosing myself and embarking on a new chapter. And I just thought of the whole Hollywood journey. She was always from LA, but I was a small town girl who came to LA to try and make it. And it's just that like quintessential story of a girl who starts with nothing and goes through the whole process. And I'm always surprised looking back now that I'm in my 40s. I'll look back at different things in my life and different things that I was interested in as a young girl and different things I consumed in the media. And then I'll see reflections of those and how my life plays out. An example that doesn't have anything to do with Marilyn is when I was young, I used to love reading V.C. Andrews books. And then recently I looked back on my life, you know, how I related it in my books. My 20s was a Gothic novel. It's weird how I would consume these things as a kid and then my life would play out in the same way in some ways.
That house that you were living in would give the vibes of a Gothic novel. It's beautiful, but
100%.
very much.
Yeah.
Are we talking the Playboy Mansion?
Yeah, it's a beautiful historic house, but yeah, you can definitely see a historic Gothic novel taking place there.
All the furniture was very goth also, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Looking through the auction catalog of everything from Hef's estate sale, the furniture definitely fit the house.
For sure.
Absolutely. So one of the things, just changing topics just a little bit about your love of Marilyn. One of the things I say when people ask me, why Marilyn? Why did you pick Marilyn? And I do believe this because there really isn't an explanation. I feel that Marilyn picked me. Not I picked Marilyn. It's just this thing that happened. What's your story with that? How did you really recognize this connection to her, whatever it might be, however you define it? And what's the history there?
I feel like she just started showing up different places in my life when I was really young. I think I first learned about her through Madonna because I was a kid in the 80s and I loved Madonna. And Madonna was at this phase in her career where she was constantly referencing Marilyn and different things she would do, whether it was the way she dressed or music videos or her hair. And also, there was a lot in pop culture going on too, like the Elton John song about Marilyn was being played on the radio a lot. And there was a book I kept seeing at the drugstore called Goddess, which was the first book on Marilyn I read. And that's the very conspiracy theory heavy one, kind of. So that was a wild way to start that off. But yeah, she just kept showing up and I was interested in her. What really cemented my interest was in fourth grade, my aunt gave me this set of Marilyn Monroe paper dolls for Christmas. And it had a little bio of her on the back and the names and years of all of her films. Not all of her films are represented in the book, but most of them are, and the costumes. And I just became so fascinated with it. I don't know what it was, a combination of just her looks and glamour and her story. And I feel like she left this energetic imprint on the world. You can feel her vulnerability and her ambition and things she didn't get to do because her life was cut too short.
Were there any particular ways that she influenced you when you were growing up?
She influenced a lot of things I became interested in. I think anytime I saw a shadow of her type of glamour, I was interested in it. Like Anna Nicole Smith, I loved when she came out in the Guess ads and she looked like Marilyn Monroe. So that kind of sparked my interest in being in Playboy. And my family and I would vacation in Southern California pretty regularly, and I saw her everywhere there. So I feel like I saw her in a lot of the things I liked.
Anna Nicole Smith is pretty much the only person I thought that ever came close to this magnetism that Marilyn had, particularly when the Guess ad was released. She's just breathtaking. You just really couldn't take your eyes off her. It was just unbelievable the way that she had this presence and just a really beautiful person. Of course, also very tragic ending.
Yeah, 100%.
And I love that footage of her where someone is interviewing her on the street and they say, "You're as beautiful as Marilyn Monroe," or "You're better than Marilyn Monroe." And she says, never better.
Never better.
That was so sweet.
Yeah.
Actually just posted that recently on social media. But yeah, it's great. I might be good, but never as good as Marilyn. Do you think, Holly, that she's influenced you as an adult, as a person, or maybe your style? For me, for a long time, it was just like, okay, I'm the same age as Marilyn when this was happening in her life. And then 36 comes and then it's all different because it never is beyond that. And so how does she show up for you like that?
That's so weird you say that about 36, because when I was in my 30s, a lot of my friends said that they finally felt grown up at 35. But I didn't really feel that until 36. And then I wondered if that was because I grew up with this Marilyn Monroe biography burned into my brain and thinking that I never, of course, wanted my life to end early or anything, but feeling like you made it past 36 was like, wow, you're really a grown-up now.
Yeah, I kind of had those same feelings. And I also used to reflect quite a bit. This is the age I am now. This is what was going on in Marilyn's life at this time. It wasn't a constant, but it was just this thing that crept up. Elisa, do you have memories of those same types of feelings or experiences, or was it different for you?
I do, because she got married so young and then had to drop out of school and wanted to go to college and took classes, and things that I took for granted would have been a big deal for her. She didn't have the chance to finish high school or finish a degree or things like that. And I remember being around 36 and I had some health problems and I came out through the other end and I thought, wow, I came out of this and she didn't, and different kinds of health problems than what she had, but still. And I remember, this is so interesting, speaking of her lifespan, when I was in the 5th grade, we had to do oral book reports for the class and we had to do biographies. So I, of course, chose Marilyn Monroe. And other people were choosing Jacques Cousteau and all these great people. All of them were fascinating. And the teacher put up this big timeline on the wall of what people's lifespans were. And like Jacques Cousteau had this really long lifespan. And then all of these people had these long lifespans. And my person, Marilyn Monroe, had this little tiny lifespan on this big mural that we had on the wall of dates. And I thought, oh my gosh, so much influence for such a tiny little spot on this timeline. And I just remember looking at it in class thinking, how that line is so short. And it just stuck with me. And I don't know why it stuck with me, but I thought, wow, she accomplished so much in so little time.
Absolutely. It's really fascinating. And as far as being an influence, I feel like at this point in my life, it's so ingrained. I feel like I'm probably influenced in more ways than I know because it did start at such an early age. I probably don't even recognize half of it, but it's always there a little bit in makeup and hair. Not that I do my makeup exactly like her, but there's little things here and there. In my 20s, I used to try to all the time. There was this book called Be Marilyn. It was written by a drag queen, and it was the first place I learned to contour because drag queens were contouring before anybody else was. I take the little things I like from it and it meshes in with my personal style. Or if I find an outfit that kind of reminds me of her a little bit, I like it more. Little things like that. And I'm just always thinking about her, even being here in Vegas, downtown. She spent a small period of time in Vegas while she was waiting to get a divorce. And in the book, Marilyn Monroe, Personal and Confidential, they really get into that time in her life and really get detailed with it. So if I'm driving downtown and I go by the house that she used to spend a lot of time at, I'm just always thinking of her. There's always things that remind me of her.
Yeah. What was the guy's name that lived in Vegas? Bill Purcell.
Bill Purcell.
Yeah.
Friend whose house she was at all the time.
Yeah, Bill Purcell, who I knew and used to talk about Marilyn. It's really interesting. Like, everybody dated Marilyn. If Marilyn actually dated everybody that said that they dated her, she wouldn't have time for anything else. But anyway, Bill did have 2 autographed photos that she gave him. And the pen was basically running out of ink when she signed the photos. He put them up for auction several years ago. They didn't advertise them as having been gifted to Bill from Marilyn, but I knew that they were, and I got both of those photos for $125.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Speaking of Vegas and Bill Purcell, that's my Vegas Marilyn story. But yeah, you can still see the indentations of her signature, but the pens were out of ink, so there's not the ink there, but just the indentations.
So I was curious. The way I found Marilyn was through Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and seeing her sing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend on TV. I was wondering if you have any favorite movies.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for the longest time when I was younger, Bus Stop was my favorite. I feel like it's the most emotional. That was always like such a romantic tearjerker for me. But I always loved Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, of course. How can that not be one of your favorites? And I love How to Marry a Millionaire too. It's just so pretty to look at. That's my favorite sick day movie, when I just want to relax and turn on something that you can totally get lost in. And there's so much eye candy and so much. I love the 3 characters and it's funny. I love that one.
And the whole scheme about selling off furniture, and it's just such a great storyline.
It's so funny.
And I love the friendship between the 3 leading ladies. I think they're really great together.
That's what I love about that. And Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is it's so female friendship positive.
Yeah, we need more of that today. Millionaire is actually my favorite Marilyn film. I think it really does demonstrate her comedic abilities to be able to pretend that you can't see if you're not wearing your glasses. And it works. It just comes off. She's so talented.
Yeah.
So you post in Playboy. And of course, Hugh Hefner chose Marilyn for the cover of the first Playboy, also the centerfold. She didn't have anything to do with that. He just happened to buy the rights and publish those photos. So just to clarify, Marilyn was not connected to Hugh Hefner. They never met, from what we understand. But was it meaningful for you to be in the magazine the way that Marilyn was in the magazine? Did it change your life? You posed as Marilyn in Playboy also. So tell us about all that.
Yeah, I wanted to be in Playboy just because of some of the women who were contemporary in the 90s who'd done it, who I thought were really cool, like the Anna Nicole Smiths and the Jenny McCarthy's and people like that. And when I learned that Marilyn had been in the first issue, that made me want to do it even more. That was something that was really exciting to me. When I was reading the Marilyn biographies growing up, that was something that never really stuck in my head. I knew about the calendar and everything, but when I realized she was the first Playboy cover, I thought, oh, this is so cool. I really want to do this. Now, of course, I look at it differently now, knowing that she wasn't paid for that and she didn't have a say in the photo going so wide nationally because so few people had seen it before then. And it really could have ruined her career. It didn't, but didn't know at the time. It really could have been something that was detrimental to her. So I look at it differently now. But when I first discovered that, that really made me want to do Playboy even more. And in my second pictorial, I did a Marilyn themed shoot. It was with the two other girls from Girls Next Door, and we each had a different theme. Kendra's was football, Bridget's was King Kong, and I wanted mine to be old Hollywood, and there's nothing more old Hollywood than the Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend scene. So that was the backdrop. I would not recommend wooden stairs as anything you ever pose nude on, because there's just not a lot you can do that's flattering without really hurting yourself. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I love the photos.
Listeners, take note. No wooden stairs for photo shoots.
And related to the photo shoot we've been talking about where you honor Marilyn, you've had some replicas of dresses made that give homage to Marilyn or some of her costumes. I remember seeing a picture of you in a bus stop costume. I don't know if it was a Halloween party or it's been a long time since I've seen that photo, but you seem to really gravitate towards that vintage style and Marilyn style in particular. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I loved it. I love any chance to dress up. I love a theme. I love recreating the outfits that were in that paper doll book I had growing out. It was always like my dream to have all those outfits. So yeah, I did the bus stop costume for a Mardi Gras party, and there were several parties where I would theme my outfit around something Marilyn wore. I think my favorite thing I ever had made was an Easter dress that was a replica of the dress she wore when she did the handprint ceremony at Grauman's Chinese Theater. They did such a good job on it. It turned out really well. It was super flattering and super cute. I totally wear it again.
Do you still have some of those?
Yeah, I have them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elisa's so cute. She'll send me little pictures and she's, oh, look at Holly. She's so cute.
Whenever I find one, I send them to Scott.
Because we know that eventually we were going to have you on the podcast. And so we've just kept that flame going in the background until we were able to actually get it scheduled.
I love it.
Do you have a favorite costume of Marilyn's? What is your favorite film costume or outfit or personal outfit?
Yeah, I think my favorite outfit she ever wore was the plum colored dress in How to Marry a Millionaire. I just think it's so gorgeous and so well done and so flattering.
Trivia.
Picture it just feeling so soft and everything.
Yeah.
Does that still exist anywhere?
As far as I know, there's nothing but replicas of that. But the original, there are some costumes that have just never been seen again. And as far as I know, that's one of them that probably just went back into the studio archives. And Fox actually threw out quite a bit of costumes over the years. So there are treasures that were just thrown out because they needed the space and will never be seen again. So that was probably what happened to that one. Trivia did make replicas, not the same.
Yeah. Oh, that sucks.
Speaking of the costumes in How to Marry a Millionaire, you know that bathing suit she wears and it has a little coverlet. That coverlet was found in a thrift store a few years ago and it was auctioned off. It was in very bad condition, but someone found it. There was a 20th Century Fox label in it. It was real, and whoever found it bought it for $10 or something and then flipped it and made a fortune on it, because even though it was in poor condition, it's How to Marry a Millionaire.
It was incredibly faded.
I found that. I would keep it forever.
I know. That's so crazy. You know what else I'm obsessed with that she has are those lucite shoes she used to wear with the different colored ribbons that she'd make.
Everybody is. Everybody is.
No one can find them.
Somebody should replicate those and sell them. I love
Somebody
those.
did. Yeah. Somebody did. Someone has shoes that she sells.
Oh, I want to buy those.
Yeah. That's one question I'm asked all the time. Where are those lucite heels? So I have no idea.
Cute.
If I knew, I'm not sure I would tell you.
Yeah.
You've talked about your love for old Hollywood. Did that start with Marilyn?
Oh, absolutely. It did. Yeah. I would always look at the TV guide in the paper back then and try to find when her movies were playing on TV and stuff. And that kind of got me into other old movies as well and other people like Jean Harlow. And I really got into it.
That's exactly how I fell in love with Jean Harlow too, with Marilyn.
Yeah.
And if you get into Marilyn, eventually you're going to come across Jean Harlow. And then I fell in love with her.
Yeah.
For her own merits. Yeah.
I don't know about you, Holly, but I hear people over the years say sometimes I was born in the wrong era. I think I should have been born back then, like back in the 50s or whatever. And considering your love of old Hollywood, do you think you were born in the right era, or maybe the 50s may have been a better time in history for you?
No, I like it now because I feel like you can still enjoy everything that was made back then, and you can access different things, different styles, and have them made, and you get the best of everything now.
Yeah. Of course, some people say they wish they would be in the future too. It runs the
Yeah.
gamut, all different elements of time.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about being a blonde bombshell because you grew up admiring Marilyn and then Jean
Mhm.
Harlow. You are a blonde bombshell yourself. We had Daryl Rooney on the show a while back, and he wrote that great book about Jean Harlow. And he talked about how Jean Harlow really struggled with the image she had. Now, granted, this was a time when studios crafted that image for you. So she didn't always
Mhm.
have a lot of control over it. And then Marilyn had a similar problem 20 years later, but they struggled with the term sex symbol, which is not a term that we particularly like. It's pretty degrading, but that's what they were called. And we were wondering what it is like to be considered a sex symbol or just being beautiful and blonde, but also being smart because you have accomplishments, as we talked about earlier, but some people might just see you as a pretty blonde. And I was fascinated with if it has changed at all since their era. Is it the same? How do you deal with that?
I think it's definitely changed a lot, even in more recent times. I feel like when I was first starting out 20 years ago, it was harder back then too. I feel like the media was a lot more cruel to women who are in the public eye and kind of categorized as sexy or whatever. And you had a lot less avenues open to you. A lot of people didn't want to work with you or things like that. And I feel like, I don't know if it's just I'm more comfortable in my own skin now, or people really are more tolerant about that kind of thing. But I feel like things are a lot better even than it was 20 years ago. So I can't imagine how limiting it must have felt even further back to want to like expand and do more things and be taken more seriously. And people just want to write you off.
Your career in the last few years has really taken off with the TV shows and your podcast. So I can see how that's happening for you.
Things are way better now. And I think people are more accepting of individuals as being multifaceted and not just one thing or not just a stereotype. I'm pretty happy with all that right now.
You've gone really far beyond Girls Next Door.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I binge watched, like, I just couldn't stop watching. And I watched all the way through. Like, I didn't miss. And then I shared with you, poof, you were gone. And it was like, oh my God, this is not okay. And it was just such a empty kind of a feeling. It's because it just went from you guys to a new set of Hefner's girlfriends, and then the show ended and that was it.
Yeah, it's funny the way it was handled really poorly when we were all ready to leave. The only one the producers were prepared to let go of was Kendra. So they have this big Bon Voyage episode for her, but not anyone else. And then next season, all of a sudden, blink of an eye, it's 3 new people.
And now you've got so much else going on above and beyond all of that. So
yeah, I feel really lucky.
Talking about appearances and Marilyn and Jean and even what you've gone through, there's a lot of pressure on women just in general, but especially women in the public eye. And you have been really brave and outspoken about your issues with body dysmorphia. And I was wondering if you felt pressure to look a certain way, and what advice do you have for others who might be going through that? Because I think it's a pretty common problem for a lot of people, but women especially.
When I was really going through my body dysmorphia, it was when I was living at the Playboy Mansion, and I would look at myself on the TV show and feel like I was really heavier than I wanted to be. And really, I'd make myself feel bad over that, like I wasn't working hard enough. And now when I look back and watch the show, I remember having those feelings and thoughts, but I was just really thin and I just couldn't believe that I had been so warped. And I think it came from living in the mansion. You know, I had always wanted to look like a typical playmate. So that was like a aesthetic that I chose. But I think living there and being made to feel like I didn't measure up all the time from Hef, and only living in that bubble where you only see these really beautiful women that fit a very narrow beauty standard come in all the time, and you're not even seeing normal people for years and years. it can really warp your mind and you start nitpicking on really weird things and it really gets very dysmorphic and out of control. And it's something I still have to check myself a little bit with now. And I can only imagine younger people coming up with social media and they just see filtered people online all the time, or seeing themselves with a filter and then not liking how they look without it. It's got to be really difficult. And you got to just keep yourself in check and keep yourself grounded and realize that everybody else is out there faking it too, appearance wise.
And you cannot believe the filters. That is not real.
I know. And now AI people too, like somehow I got on this algorithm where on my Instagram Explore page, it's all AI girls and they're pretty close to looking real. Until you click on it and really look at it, you can't tell that they're not real. And of course, the technology is going to change in probably 6 months. They probably will look totally real and you can't tell. But it's all these women who have these ridiculous body proportions that nobody has in real life. And it's just, oh my God, this is the next step of insanity. Everybody's going to be comparing themselves in the worst way. And I can't imagine how men who are looking at that and fantasizing to that, how they're then dealing with real women. And are they even turned on by real women? And is that the next step of porn addiction? It's really a strange thing.
It's really warped. I think another thing to remember too, though, is there are people out there that have unlimited resources and access to personal trainers, dietitians, stylists, plastic surgeons. All of this comes together to create this look and this appearance and this presence. The majority of the people just don't have access to those resources. So you're comparing yourself to somebody that is setting the bar so high, and even that bar is not real. I think it's one thing to go and have a little work done to touch yourself up, but I think it's another thing to set a standard and be in the public eye that other people just are never going to be able to attain.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I think it's just so helpful to limit your online time and exposure, go out and interact with real people, and don't forget what a real actual human looks like.
Exactly. That's a really good point. Don't get caught up in it. Yeah. So Holly, I remember you mentioned this a little bit earlier about being involved with an auction, but you were actually fortunate enough to be photographed wearing some pieces for the auction at Julian's, and it was Marilyn's pieces. And so talk about that. What was that experience like, and what is it that you modeled?
Oh my God, that was such a crazy, amazing experience. And it felt like such a full circle moment for me because I really got into Marilyn with those paper dolls and her outfits. And some of the things I modeled were things that were in that paper doll set, like the jacket from The Prince and a Showgirl and things like that. So I got to model that. There was a cream colored evening gown. There was this necklace with lucite amber colored droplets that she wore. There was a casual set of jeans and an orange top. There was a white bathrobe, which ended up selling for a crazy amount of money. And it just felt so special. Another one of the pieces was the undergarment that she wore for the costume test for the original costume for Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, the one that had all those heavy rhinestone pieces over it. It was a fishnet leotard under that. And it was such an amazing experience just to see how those garments were constructed on the inside because they were such quality pieces. And it was just such a surreal, crazy moment, and definitely one of my favorite things I've ever done, for sure.
Is that your favorite Marilyn experience or Marilyn moment?
I think so, yeah. It was so oddly specific toward how I was introduced to her that it just felt so full circle.
And you're pretty petite yourself, like Marilyn. One of the things that I'm asked all the time is about Marilyn's true size. And there's a belief that she was plus sized, heavy set. And the truth is she was 5'5.5" and averaged about 115 to 117 pounds. So what was your experience just fitting into her clothes?
I was in really good shape at the time because I just finished doing Dancing with the Stars. So everything fit perfectly. I was probably at 112 pounds at that time, 5'5". The leotard fit like a glove. Everything else fit perfectly.
That's just to give people an idea of what Marilyn's true size actually was from someone who tried on her clothes. She was tiny. She was very small. Yeah, very small. So for me, just the most exciting kind of Marilyn moment was being in both of her homes, the Brentwood home, and then also I was lucky enough to get into her apartment in New York.
Oh, that's so cool.
On 57th Street, and just the doorman happened to be very generous, and the apartment was being remodeled and took me up, and so I was able to get some photos inside. So that was really amazing. I don't know of anybody else that's ever been inside that apartment.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Elisa, what's yours?
Probably going to the 1999 auction.
Yeah. You're one of the few people I know that actually went. You went, Greg went. I know Delta Burke was there.
I
So,
sat behind Delta Burke.
switching to a more personal topic, Holly, you've been really open about your autism diagnosis and your struggles with forming social connections. What advice do you have for other people that might be experiencing those same challenges?
If you suspect you might be on the spectrum, of course, getting evaluated is immensely helpful. It's also difficult. It's an expensive process. For me, it was at least 7 different appointments with a therapist and others that they did with my ex-husband and my mom, because they want to talk to people who have dealt with you throughout your life and how you've reacted to certain things. So it's very expensive. It's even hard to find people who do it for adults, really. It's not this easy access thing necessarily, but I found there's a lot of people who are on the spectrum who are sharing their experiences on TikTok, and just listening to other people's experiences and what they're going through is so helpful. So I think finding creators and finding community online can be really helpful.
I just think it's so important for people to share experiences, and it just sends a message to other people that you're not alone. You know,
Totally.
it's just so important because you just feel like you're the only person in the world that might be dealing with the issue. And so to know that somebody else, especially someone as so successful as yourself and in the public eye, just setting an example for other people that you can be successful regardless of challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sharing stories is so important for that reason.
Have you heard from other people since you've gone public?
Oh, yeah, online all the time. People always tell me that they have looked into it themselves and have either got diagnosed or not. And they found hearing my story really helpful.
Going to switch topics back to Hef just for a second. And just curious what your opinion is about the fact that he bought the plot next to Marilyn's final resting place. Hugh Hefner, for those people who don't know who might be listening, is buried immediately to Marilyn's left at Westwood Mortuary and Cemetery there in Brentwood, California. Obviously, you were very close to Hef and knew him, and you, I'm sure, talked about Marilyn. He could have been buried anywhere. Do you know why he chose that? And just what are your thoughts?
I think he was really fascinated with fame and legacy. And I think it's just like an ultimate clout chase. You're always going to be extra remembered if you're buried next to the biggest Hollywood star. And of course, there was the connection that she was in the first issue and started off his whole business. And when he passed and it started making the news, that's where he was buried. Somebody I follow on Twitter reposted it and they wrote, "That is the loneliest person I've ever heard of." And I was like, wow, that's true. Because can you imagine there's no loved one or person in real life that you want to be buried next to? So you've picked somebody you never even met.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Elisa, do you have an opinion?
I do. I have mixed feelings. He can be buried wherever he wants. At the same time, I feel like it's his way of being associated with Marilyn for eternity and kind of attaching himself to her fame. But at the same time, I go back to that first issue of Playboy and how I have mixed feelings on that too. She posed for the photo. She signed the release. She was paid at the time and Hef bought that photo fair and square. But he published it knowing that he might ruin her career. And he did it anyway. And I think she had a quote about saying the people who published that photo never said thank you. And then here he is buried next to her for eternity. So it's a little uneasy for me. At the same time, I don't want to speak too poorly of him because there's good points and bad points to everyone. And there were some things that he did that I really liked. He helped the Hollywood sign more than once. He donated money to charities that restore old films. So in that regard, he put his money where his mouth is. And I really appreciate those things. And when you hear about those movie nights at the mansion where he would play old movies and friends would come over and watch these movies and there'd be a buffet dinner, that's my idea of the perfect party. So I probably would have liked meeting him. He probably would have been really nice. But at the same time, I just can't get past the fact that it was less about her and more about him being chosen to be laid to rest next to her for eternity. And that's a rambling answer, but I have some hard feelings about it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
love a rambling answer. I like getting the whole story.
you're clearly looking at all sides, and I think it's always
Yeah.
important to look at all sides. My opinion is it's Hugh Hefner. He was a pioneer, the founder of Playboy. He probably should have been laid to rest in a mausoleum somewhere in a cemetery. That's something that I would have anticipated and predicted. But I agree with you, Holly. It's just, I'm going to just attach myself to Marilyn, and I'm just going to be buried next to her.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Because you're right,
Yeah.
had he gotten a big mausoleum, he has children and now
Right.
grandchildren.
Yeah.
And the Hefner family could be laid to rest together. And he
Yeah.
decided against that.
Yeah. Just don't think it was needed, but that's my opinion. That's just my opinion. So, Holly, we were also going to talk about books and share stories and experiences. We had talked about how you were just curious what we would recommend as far as books to read. And so, of course, just for transparency, Elisa has written her own book, and it was just published late last year, and it's called Hello, Norma Jean, The Marilyn Monroe You Didn't Know.
Oh, that's
and
exciting. I'll have to get it.
Yeah.
Thank
So that's
you.
a good book. I think we'd recommend, considering our podcast co-host authored that. Myself, though, the two books that I always recommend to people are two of the very earliest books on Marilyn. One is Marilyn Monroe by Maurice Solito, and that was actually written while Marilyn was still alive. And Marilyn actually had a book in her library by Zolito, Oh Careless Love, which I actually happen to own. And then I also have a letter that was sent to her from the publisher saying, here's Maurice Zolito's book enclosed for you. So it's interesting that she had a book by Zolito, but as far as I know, she didn't actually have the biography on herself that he had written for her. And the other book I always recommend is one of the very, very early biographies, Norma Jean by Fred Lawrence Giles, the first edition.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So I find that books expand over time, right? So the farther away we get from when Marilyn was alive, the books just grow and expand, and it's just more and more stories that have moved farther and farther away from the actual truth. A very good friend of ours and frequent podcast guest, Gary, has written incredible volumes on Marilyn, and he has done incredible research. So he actually wrote the first book on her house, Marilyn's Brentwood Hacienda.
Oh, yeah, I've read that one. It's so good.
It is good. And that's the only book on Marilyn's house. But he's also got Icon, The Lifetimes and Films of Marilyn Monroe, Volumes 1 and 2. And they are extensive.
There's a third one now.
There's a third one now.
Yeah.
Very extensively researched. So I think those are a couple of the books that we would recommend. Our friend April has also written books on Marilyn. And she, of course, loves Jane Mansfield. So for Jane Mansfield fans. But Elisa, what would you recommend?
The ones you just mentioned, along with Michelle Morgan's book, Private and Undisclosed.
She's written a couple of books, and Marilyn and the Queen is quite popular. I haven't read that one, but I know that a lot of people reference that as being a pretty good book. And of course, Michelle is UK based, and so she's got access to quite a bit of information and knowledge there. What books have you read that you liked and found to be authentic for yourself, Holly?
Think as far as just like a basic one, like telling of her life story, I like the Marilyn Monroe by photos. The British author you mentioned, I have a copy of the book she wrote, but I think my version is called Marilyn Monroe Personal and Confidential. I think there might be a title variation depending on where the book was sold. But I thought that one was so interesting, if it is indeed the right author. It was also a British female author who wrote that book. That I'm thinking.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah. I like it when I come across a book that has a lot of really interesting details on a period of time in her life that maybe the other books didn't cover. Like that one had a lot of detail on her few weeks in Las Vegas. It had a lot of detail on her time being married and just things they would do out in the valley and things she would do around the house. And I love getting those little details. I also felt that way about, I think it was called The Secret Lives of Marilyn Monroe, and it had a lot of details about her childhood and foster care.
Different people, different authors focus on different things that they want to report out on in the book. So yeah, you get little bits and pieces of information from many different sources.
Is there anything you would like people to know about your love and relationship with Marilyn?
Oh gosh, I'm so fascinated by her, and through her, you get this portal into like the story of old Hollywood, the story of LA at a certain period of time. And it just expands into more and more things. I think it's so interesting.
Yeah, she certainly represents, I think, a really interesting period in time that has just transcended everything. She's still so huge today. It's really incredible. Every time somebody's skirt blows up, it's a Marilyn Monroe moment.
Yeah.
When everybody sings happy birthday the way that she sang happy birthday. She's just had such an impact on culture.
Anyone
and
who's blonde and wears red lipstick.
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Modeled Marilyn. Yeah. It's really fascinating and interesting. Holly, how can our listeners keep up with you and stay on top of what you're working on and what your activities are? What are your socials?
My socials are Instagram is at Holly Madison, TikTok is at Holly Jean Madison. And I have a new season of the Playboy Murders coming out May 5th. That'll be on Investigation Discovery, and also you can stream it on Max. There'll be a new season of Lethally Blonde coming shortly after that in the same places. And my podcast, Girls Next Level, comes out every Monday, anywhere you get podcasts.
It's been a pleasure. And again, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure that our listeners are just going to love hearing from you and learning more about your love of Marilyn and opening up a whole new opportunity. And thank you for sharing your personal story. You, again, have accomplished so much, and sharing personal details and all that. I think people will really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. That was so fun, guys.
Thank you for coming. Be sure to give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed this interview. The whole goal of this show is to get old Hollywood out there, make sure people know the real Marilyn, and that's all we ask.
Remember that you can follow us on Instagram at All Things Marilyn Podcast, and you can also email us if you have questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions, or ideas for future episodes. We are at allthingsmarilynpodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time on All Things Marilyn.
Good night, man.
Bye-bye.
You loved on the screen, and that's the one thing that survived,
I realize more and more the responsibility, but you do miss sometimes just being able to be completely yourself and someplace and people just know you as another human being.